Hello everybody, welcome to Jubes & Co. with me, Michelle Dewberry, alongside me. Till 7, I've got Zia Youssef and Barry Gardner, but also people are waiting to hear. We talk about welfare reform. We've just had Labour updating us on their U-turns. Someone who's not happy about that. Kemi Badenoch speaks to Christopher Herp live now.
Michelle, that's right. Welcome to the House of Commons. We're in the office of Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader. All eyes here on what will the Tories do tomorrow with this crunch vote in the House of Commons on these benefit reforms. And with me now is the leader of the Tory party, Kemi Badenoch. Kemi Badenoch, how will you vote tomorrow?
We asked Labour to bring the welfare budget down and to get people into work. And if their bill did that, we would support them. The bill doesn't do that, so we are voting against.
A big moment then. I mean, how many Labour MPs might be on your team if you do vote against?
Who knows? This is a government in chaos. Labour cannot govern. They came into office thinking it was going to be very easy, but what's happened is that because of COVID, we now have 1 million extra people on benefits. We need to get those people back into work. The bill just before COVID for health and disability benefits was 40 billion. It's going to be up to 100 billion on Labour's current plans. So they're not cutting the budget, they're just cutting how much they would increase it by. That is not good enough. We need to have people working. There are a lot of people who are genuinely disabled, who have significant conditions that need looking after. But what we've seen is that in that 1 million extra that we've got of people claiming benefits, a lot of people with low-lying conditions like anxiety, those people need to be in work and need to be supported into work. That's what we want to see.
Do you blame the increase in mental health issues being used as reasons not to work as part of this bill going up?
No, actually, what I blame is the way that they do the assessments. During COVID, we allowed remote assessments to take place for understandable reasons. But what's happening now is that people are just ringing up and saying, "I'm too anxious to come in for an assessment," and they immediately get, a classification and benefits. There are even, people on social media called sickfluencers who are telling people what to say so that they can claim benefits, and that is not fair because it's clogging up the system for those people who need proper assessments. It's, we're needing to hire more staff to look after a larger cohort of people. We need to get people back into work.
Are people being work shy here?
I think that there is an element of that. I think that we need to make sure that we don't have a lopsided incentive system. Right now, there are 28 million people working to help 28 million people not working. The rider is now as big as the horse. We've got to fix that. So the people we're supporting are those people who get out there every day, working hard, some on minimum wage, whether you're a nurse or a plumber, you've got a small business. Those are the people that the Conservatives are supporting. We don't want to see the benefits bill go up. Reform wants more benefits. That is where we are different from them. We believe in fiscal responsibility. And what we're seeing right now is that we're overspending £100 billion extra. Who's going to pay for that? It's our kids. That's not fair. Someone's got to change something.
You're working out your policy programme now. If you're the next Prime Minister, what would you do to cut benefits?
So we would deal with the remote assessments. People need to be assessed in person, whether they're being assessed at a job centre or at home. We need to do that. We also need to support those people who have those low-level conditions back into work. So there should be some support for that as well, but we need to cut the bill. There's a lot that can be done. Organisations like the CSJ have put in reports showing how they can save 9 billion. Labour is talking about saving 1 to 2 billion off a £100 billion bill when it was 40 billion not that long ago. That's not enough.
Just on a different issue, we're here in Parliament. We heard from Lisa Nandy, the Culture Secretary, about these dreadful remarks, hateful remarks, broadcast by the BBC from the Glastonbury Festival. Should the BBC rip up its deal with Glastonbury?
I wouldn't mind that if they cannot stop acts from preaching hate. I mean, talking about from the river to the sea, death to the IDF, that's absolutely disgusting. And there were two bands who do this sort of thing. One was I think Bob Vylan. The other one was Kneecap, which, if you remember, Chris, I stopped them getting government money when I was business secretary. An election happened, Labour caved in, let them have that money. We're actually paying some of these people. It's completely ridiculous. This is a band where one of its members is being charged, I believe, with terrorism. That cannot be right. And the BBC needs to do better. There were loads of acts that they could have filmed that day. Why did they film the one that was pushing messages that were incitement to hate?
And both those are live criminal cases. We'll steer away from that. But the BBC's involvement is interesting. Tim Davies in charge. He's the Director General. Should he resign?
I think that Tim Davie has a lot of serious questions to answer. This is not the first time that the BBC has been accused of allowing material that is intimidating to Jews. And what I want to say to the Jewish people in our country is that we back you, we support you, we can see what is happening. It is quite wrong for any sort of intimidation to be taking place. And you only need to look at what happened with Lucy Connolly. What she did was not as significant as many of these more horrific cases. So it's quite clear that sometimes the state knows how to tackle this. So let's see them tackle these people who are pushing hateful messages and stop rushing out, putting mums in prison for tweets when actually there are a lot of other people who deserve much stricter sanctions.
Just finally on Tim Davie's future, should he walk for this? It's not the first time there are issues with the BBC.
Well, I think that there's supposed to be a review that's taking place. I think that's the right place for that. So, no, I don't think that it's got to that point, but there are very, very serious questions to answer.
And just on Lucy Connolly there, you mentioned that does exercise a lot of GBNews viewers and listeners.
It exercises me as well. There was a lot of leeway that could have been looked at many points, the charging, the sentencing. What she did was wrong, but what we're seeing is that a lot of other people do the same thing and do worse, and they get away with it. That's what I hate. It's that inequality before the law. Let's have one law for everybody.
Is that two-tier justice then?
I think that, well, it looks like it. And I do think that we need to get to a place where we have equality under the law, the same justice for everybody. That's what the Conservative Party stands for.
Kemi Badenoch, thank you there. And there you have it from Michelle. Kemi Badenoch there with some tough words there for the government. But the big news is the Tories will vote against tomorrow's benefits bill. It'll be a big night in Parliament. I'll be there covering it for GB News.
Interesting stuff. Christopher Hope, thank you very much for that as well. What is he referring to when he's talking about welfare? Of course, you've got that second reading of the welfare reform bill taking place tomorrow. So Liz Kendall, she was addressing Parliament today. Let's take a listen.
Welfare reform is never easy, but it is essential. Because there is no route to equality or social justice based on greater benefit spending alone. The path to a fairer society, where everyone can thrive, where people who can work get the support they need, and where we protect those who cannot work, that is the path we seek to build with our reforms. Our plans are rooted in fairness for those who need support and for taxpayers. They're about ensuring the welfare state survives, so there is always a safety net for those who need it, and so it lasts for generations to come.
A passionate performance there. Barry Gardner, these U-turns, let's just call them what they are, do they go too far or not far enough in your mind?
Well, look, I think there's a huge amount of confusion, actually, because the government's Green Paper set out some very sensible things that they wanted to do. They said the right to try, so that if you had been signed off and you were on long-term sick and you wanted to get back into work, but were afraid that if you did and then couldn't manage it, your benefits would be stopped and you'd be back to the beginning. That was a really sensible reform.
It is a very sensible reform,
give them the right to try and don't penalise them in the process. I think there's a lot of confusion, though, about what are, in fact, not means-tested benefits here. And if you look at PIP, for example, these are extra costs payments. So they're not means-tested, they're needs-tested. And what we do, quite simply, is we say, look, if you're disabled and your disability costs you more simply to live because you have to have extra heating or you have extra transport costs or you have sanitary pads that you need to have and so on, all these things, we will give you enough as a society to make sure that you're not disadvantaged by your disability. And that seems to me about the sort of society we want to live in. It's about equality. Now, what the government's done is it's confused and conflated some of that with the work-related benefits. And again, there's different elements of that. You know, one of the problems here is that our benefit system is so complicated because you have work-related benefits that are for people who are with long-term disability, maybe in a little bit of work, but earning so little that they can't afford to live. That's a question of how much they should be paid, quite honestly, for the work that they do. Some of them are in full-time work on universal credit, but they're not getting paid enough. So I think what the government's done now, though, is it said, OK, for existing benefits claimants, we'll keep things broadly the same, But for anybody coming new into the system on PIP, we will actually insist that it's a tighter rule. Now, that can't be right, can it? That if you have the same disability and you get that disability in 6 months' time, you won't get the benefits that somebody with that disability is getting now.
So what are you saying? You don't think it goes far enough?
Well, what I'm saying is I think it's very confused. Some elements of it I would vote for without a shadow of a doubt. Other elements I think are just very confused and they're very unfair.
So how are you going to vote tomorrow then?
Well, there's a lot of talking to be done before now and tomorrow's vote. And I'll be talking more and more. I've talked with all the lead players in this.
But what do you need to talk about? Because you know the details now.
Because I think the government should actually withdraw this bill and come back once they've done that consultation with disabled people, once they've actually sorted out the inequalities that they are now building into the system by saying, well, if you've got the disability now, you're okay, but if you get it in 6 months' time, you will be penalised, you will get less money. That's not the sort of society that is an equal, fair society.
And just very quickly, what do you think the chances of the whole thing being pulled are?
I think,
strong chance or not?
I think it depends on how many members of Parliament, backbench Labour MPs, say we can't vote for this as it stands.
Sally, I won't give you surname for obvious reasons when I read out your email, Sally. Sally says, half my family claim PIP, Michelle, and none of them need it. They reckon it's just easy to get it. They are lazy and they don't want to work because they're better off on PIP. You see why I didn't give a surname there. Zia, what's your thought on all of this?
Look, reform is on the side of the people who set their alarm clocks before they go to bed and who graft hard, and upon whom the tax burden in this country is at the highest level since World War II. And every time we get into this debate about benefits and disability, all of this stuff, no one ever pauses to remember and point out that all of the things we're talking about need to be paid for by somebody, and they're being paid for by ever more hours of the day of hard graft from people who set their alarm clocks and go to work. So, yes, of course, there are people who genuinely need those disability benefits and genuinely need universal credit. However, 1 in 4 now, 1 in 4 working-age adults in this country, Michelle, are now claiming benefits. And there's nothing about that that's remotely, A, acceptable, or B, sustainable. If Britain does not get its arms around this catastrophe of ballooning welfare spending, I'm telling you, the IMF will. And it will not be pretty when that happens. I want to reiterate, reform is on the side, and you're going to hear this, I'll say this time and time again. We will make the argument that it was under the Tories. I mean, we just heard Kemi Badenoch give that interview. And as usual, the Tories stand on top of the smouldering embers of a home they burned down and offer firefighting and construction services. It was the Tories who created a welfare system that was more addictive than crack cocaine. And if you look at every other country in the world, pretty much, that had lockdowns and all of these things, they had a spike in benefit claimants, and those have largely normalised. This has not happened in the United Kingdom. All of the things she just talked about there, how easy it is to get onto benefits. You go onto Reddit, go onto ChatGPT, it will tell you how easy it is, what answers to give in order to get onto these benefits programs.
I was looking at TikTok.
The architects, TikTok's another one.
I was on TikTok and there was all these random so-called influencers encouraging people like me, i.e. the people watching that video, if you say this, you'll get this. If you say that, you'll get these points. And it was really
Michelle, we have reached
shocking.
the stage now. We have, if the game is so rigged and unfair, at such large scale, Michelle, then eventually even good people who want to do right start to feel like they're mugs, and if they're not doing the same thing, then they're losing out. And look at Motability. 1 in 5 cars sold in the United Kingdom, rolling off forecourts, brand new, are funded by the taxpayer. And you know what sort of cars they are? Audis, BMW. Go and Google. You want to do something. Go and Google right now and type in BMW Motability or Audi Motability. Go and look at the lovely cars. No deposit, no money down, no monthly payment, and a brand new car every 3 years. And you get 3 named drivers. They actually boast about all of this. It's very glossy. And if you're looking at this and you can't afford one of those cars yourselves, you've got to ask yourself, at what point do we say enough? This country is totally on the wrong track with regards to benefits and welfare claimants. And by the way, the fact that Keir Starmer couldn't even reduce the spending by about 4 or 5 billion, which is a drop in the ocean relative to what we need to do, shows what a weak leader is. And frankly, I think both he and Rachel Reeves' days are numbered now.
Well, there you go. Ben, you were just listening to that interview with Kemi Badenoch. You've got in touch and said the Conservatives had 14 years to fix the welfare bill. They didn't do it, and I don't now believe any of this from Kemi. But Mary says, I enjoyed that interview. Kemi is talking sense, and I like it. Mel, she's got in touch, or he has got in touch and said, benefits, Michelle, should be in the form of vouchers. That would stop lots of these problems. I've got to tell you, most of you getting in touch actually agree with that sentiment, that it should be face-to-face eligibility checks, not just down the line. That's what I was saying earlier on. COVID has changed so much of the fabric of this society. Claire says, Michelle, it's simple. People who can work should work. End of. Claire, do you work? And if you do work, do you notice people's attitudes now to sick days? No offence to any of my colleagues watching this, but I actually notice people these days, they are lightweight, so many of them. They go off all the time with all of these ailments. It never used to be like that in my day, and it's still not like that in my day. I will still come to work if my leg's hanging off. But a lot of people are not like that these days, are they? And I tell you, there's a sentence, there's no greater cure for sickness than working freelance. There's a lot of truth in that, isn't there?